Okay, for the next 2 months, teams in A and in Bealey will be dealing with We Define Our Program. I know people looked a little bewildered when we were talking about the space bar, so let me explain that to you. Everybody is automatically on mute. If you want to speak, when it gets to the point that you want to speak, you do not have to take yourself off of mute. All you have to do is hit the space bar. As long as you're holding the space bar, you can speak. When you release the space bar, you will automatically be on mute again. Everybody get that? Okay. We define our program. We need a program because some people don't know why is there a need for a program. So let's talk about our objectives. We're going to define program and discuss how negative programming has adversely affected Black people. We are going to discuss elements of the BCN program as a workable solution to the issues threatening the survival of Black people. And we're going to introduce the Liberation Triangle. First, let's just talk about the textbook definition of program. It's a set of related measures or activities with a particular long-term aim. Program is also methods used to predetermine the thinking, behavior, or operations of someone or something. How does it work? It can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a person to form a new habit, and an average of 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. The 21-90 rule. Commit to a personal or professional goal for 21 straight days. Once you have established that habit, if you continue to do it for another 90 days, you will make it a permanent lifestyle change. It takes 300 to 500 repetitions to make a fresh habit. However, it takes 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions to break a bad habit. Now, we've talked a little bit about programming, but today we're going to start off with somebody in particular, Willie Lynch. Allegedly, Willie Lynch was a British slave owner from the West Indies who came to America to tell slave owners how to keep their slaves under control. Now, if you notice, I said allegedly, because historians have found that nobody could find Willie Lynch. They think the whole story of Willie Lynch was a hoax. But we're not going to concentrate on that. What we're going to concentrate on is the message, because the message is a living example of how slave owners view their slaves. Here's Willie Lynch, allegedly. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your Black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. Basically, according to the Willie Lynch letter, what Willie Lynch was doing was saying for slaveholders, what you have to do, you need to pitch your slaves against one another. The older slaves against the younger ones. The women against the men. The light-skinned against the dark-skinned. And he said it's necessary that you continuously do this. So remember, the key thing is the repetition. And he wanted to get the slaves to the point that they did not trust each other. The only people that they trusted, respected, and depended on would be who? The slave master. But he also said, you have to make sure that your wives and your children continue to do this every opportunity. Remember, it's perpetual. You got to keep doing it. And he said, if you intensely do this for a year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Let's make a slave. Now, the thing is that we want to keep in mind, while all of this was going on, not for 1 minute do we want you to think that Black folk, we just took it. We didn't. There were uprisings, there were rebellions, there were revolts. Because regardless of what was going on, we knew innately that this was wrong. This was not how things were supposed to be. And we rose up and we fought against it. And even as time went on, there were sit-ins, there were marches, there were protests, there were riots. Black folks did not just sit down and take this abuse. But one thing that we need to make clear, people in power will not share their power. So let's talk about Black folk rising up. For those of you who may not be aware, there was a community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was called Black Wall Street. And the important thing about Black Wall Street was that this was a group of former slaves. They end up putting their money together, purchasing land and investing in their own businesses. Built for Black people, by Black people. And it wasn't just in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it was all over the place, but we're talking about this particular community. But it wasn't long before the affluent African Americans start attracting the attention of white residents who resented the upscale lifestyle of the people that they deemed as inferior. It's like inferior people are not supposed to be living like this. They could not allow this to happen. So consequently, February 6, 1921, white mobs burned Black Wall Street to the ground. And I think many of you have heard about the story of Rosewood. It was a movie that came out a few years ago, which was based on a true story. In January 1923, approximately 2 years after the destruction of Black Wall Street, came the destruction, which in fact was the massacre of the self-sufficient Black town, Rosewood in Florida. So here we are. Black people are living in a society that has declared us inferior and continue to perpetuate the myth about inferiority in their institutions. People in power do not share their power. From the books that we read, now some of us can probably identify with these books. Remember the Dick and Jane books? All of the children were little white children, and we see the little dog, is that Spot? The only thing that we saw Black and Dick and Jane books were the little spots on the dog. From the books that we read to the toys that we play with, how many people remember G.I. Joe? Remember G.I. Joe? Okay, now, G.I. Joe was a real American hero. What color was G.I. Joe? White. But remember, these were the toys that we played with. Look over here. Everybody remember Barbie? Everybody had a Barbie doll. And there's Ken. And look at that cute little lily white family. But these were the toys that we played with. And then look at the racist media messages. I don't even want to try to read those. Look at the cream of wheat one. I'm gonna give you a second just to read that. Ain't got no vitamins. But these were the racist media messages. And they still hold true today. The message is clear. We are being programmed to think we are inferior. Now, I put these two particular advertisements here because these are recent. The one on the left, this was a Gap ad. Look at the picture carefully. These were all, this is the pre-teen dance group. 4 members of the team. 3 white, 1 black. Carefully look at the position of the one that's black. She's the armrest for the white girl. Are you getting the message? But let's look at the next one. Cute little boy, little brother, with his little sweatshirt on. But read the message. The coolest monkey in the jungle. This is H&M. I mean, these are the commercials that are still going out today. At an early age, at a very early age, racial messages of inferiority and good versus evil are planted in our minds. They take root in the bedtime stories about the beautiful white princesses, the courageous white superheroes, and the evil Black villains. The messages are constantly being perpetuated by signals from parents, teachers, on television, movies, magazines. Through these repetitive messages, we learn that Black people are dangerous, different, unattractive, inferior, and evil. But white people are good, safe, normal, attractive, superior. Now let's take a moment. I thought this was some very interesting information. We're talking about as young as 3 months. By 3 months, children begin to feel and sense the differences in the way their parents respond emotionally to the world. 3 months. By the time they're 1 years old, children develop a sense of who they are and who other people are. They are learning the differences in people can be good or unpleasant. You know how, have you ever seen a baby and you try to give that baby to somebody and they start crying and they sense these things at 1 year old. At 3 years, children apply color names to skin, and signals from parents affect what they think about other people. At the age of 5, they may have already internalized stereotypes and could refuse to interact with children of a different color. A child may associate the color white with beauty. Now, and I just wanted to note this. This was at the age, Martin Luther King was between 5 and 6. He hadn't gone to school yet. At this age, Martin Luther King Jr. was no longer allowed to play and interact with white children. Because around that age, they've already internalized the stereotypes and they don't want to interact with children of a different color. They get this as part of their socialization. Now here we are, 6 years old, they're going to school. But our kids are going to school, attending learning institutions with a curriculum designed to perpetuate the myth of Black inferiority. Babies are like sponges. They are soaking up all the information and all the subliminal messages from the world around them. They're also watching us. You know how we say, don't do what I do what I say do. So they're watching us, not just what we say and do, they are also picking up our emotional cues. Between the ages of 3 and 5, our children become conscious of skin color and racial stereotypes. Now remember, everything white is pure. White represents purity, innocence. Some of the positive meanings that white can convey includes cleanliness, freshness, and simplicity. The color white often seems like a blank slate, symbolizes a new beginning or a fresh start. But on the other hand, when we look at Black, we think of darkness, the darkness and the evil of Black. Black is the absence of color. Black is a mysterious color that is typically associated with the unknown or negative. Black represents evil, darkness, dirty, night, and despair. Black magic, the black sheep, the black knight, blackmail, black ball, a black eye, black hand, black market, all negative images of Black. And think about it. I was thinking about cake. When we say devil's food cake, what color is the devil's food cake? What color is the angel food cake? Subliminal messages all the time. So this is our reality. Our children began associating Black with bad and white with good. Those messages are reinforced throughout their lives in the negative Black images that fill the television screen and the fearful, distrustful way that many white folks react and deal with Black people. Let me create a quick scenario. Black folk, white folk walking down the street. Black people coming from one direction, white folks coming from the other direction. One of three things are going to happen. Number one, the white folks going to keep walking straight. They're not going to move to the left or to the right. You know why? Because they expect us to move. Number two, white folks are going to go across the street because they don't want to come anywhere near us. Or number three, the white lady going to hold on to her purse, clutch her purse, because the first thing they think is that Black folks going to steal it. These are the stereotypes. Now, I want to share this video and we're going to have a conversation with it afterwards.
In Brown versus Board of Education, the famous case that desegregated schools in the 1950s, Dr. Kenneth Clark conducted a doll test with Black children. He asked them to choose between a Black doll and a white doll. In most instances, the majority of the children preferred the white doll. I decided to reconduct this test as Dr. Clark did to see how we've progressed since then. Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
Okay.
This one.
That one?
This one. I like to play with this.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you? "15 out of the 21 children preferred the white doll."
Okay, now we're going to open up for a little discussion. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm looking in the chat. People are posting several comments in the chat. We understood that we were enslaved, which was a condition that was imposed upon us as opposed to accepting an identity, a slave. Even when we had a Black Barbie, there wasn't a Black Ken for a long time. Some of our participants never had a Barbie doll or a white doll. And American institutions, both religious and secular, function as essential agents of socialization into deeply ingrained systems of injustice towards towards Blacks. And the only thing that I would add to that is my graphic designer son told me when he was in college, they don't consider Black a color. But I can't remember what he said it was. But it's technically not even a color, but we define it that way. We attribute meaning to it, but it's not a color on the color wheel. But if anybody wants to share any comments, now's the time to unmute yourself. You don't have to all shout at one time.
So I would like to make a comment first. I was the one that wrote in the chat that we understood that our condition was one of enslavement. And I think that that's very important that we control the language, because I think it furthers the trauma when we identify ourselves as slaves. When Europeans went to Africa and stole us, they didn't steal slaves. They took African men, women, and children. And as the presentation noted, there were uprisings. We fought from the very beginning. A person who has accepted their condition of enslavement, vis-a-vis, they have accepted the identity of a slave, they don't fight to change that condition. So that's the first thing. Even because as most people know, I work in urban agriculture and I work with children, and it often comes up, Mama Hanifa, this is slave work. And so one of the things that I tell the children is, no. First of all, our ancestors were not slaves, they were enslaved. But again, if we want to, part of our healing and part of breaking the chains is for us to control the narrative and the language that we use when we define who we are to ourselves. The other thing that I wanted to comment on, and this will be the last thing because I think other people might want to have something to say as well, is when the photo of the young brother, the H&M advertisement, there was also another advertisement with a little white boy with a sweatshirt, and his sweatshirt said, King of the Jungle. But the thing that was most telling was this little brother's mother, when the backlash against H&M started coming in, she defended H&M and she saw nothing wrong with it. So again, it just shows our level of trauma around who we are as a people.
Did anybody notice at the end of the video when they asked the little girl which one was she?
Yes.
You see how she struggled to make the choice?
She did. Yes.
And the reason I say that because, okay, now, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about this. The team who did this doll experiment, it was a husband and wife. They were African-American. It was a husband and wife team, Mamie and Kenneth Clark. So it was done more than once. And as a matter of fact, this experiment was used in the Supreme Court case, Brown versus Topeka Board of Education. Thurgood Marshall asked him to do it again. But let me say, this is the one thing when I read, I almost cried. It said, okay, they asked him which doll is pretty, which doll is ugly, which doll is bad, which doll is good, which doll do you want to play with? But they said finally, when they were asked to identify with the doll that looked most like them, Kenneth Clark revealed that some of the children stormed out of the room because it was emotionally upsetting at having identified with the doll that they had rejected.
Oh, wow.
It was very traumatic for those children when they said all of these things and realized that they were identifying with the doll that they had rejected.
I think that just shows the level of the trauma that we carry, because the young sister who did that particular study, that was a young sister, and she did that, maybe 10 years ago. And so it just shows that we continue to perpetuate that trauma. We actually did a version of that study in Sorima, and the children, we did it with kindergartners, first and second graders. And part of it was to show the importance of African-centered education. The only children who chose the white doll in the majority were the kindergartners, because it was their first year and they had not been, so to speak, grounded in African culture. But the first and the second graders overwhelmingly chose the black doll on all of those metrics.
That's powerful. I wanted to say fabulous job, Sister Nika Tanae. I love how you broke it down. And one of the things that really stood out is how you showed slave programming that was forced upon our people, how it percolated all the way down to the psychological development of our children. And so we have to have a program of liberation in order to offset that and reverse that. And I think that, as Mama Hanifa was saying, that if we don't demonstrate and if we don't bring forth a program as we have it at the Shrine of the Black Madonna, but if Black people do not engage into a program of liberation, we're going to continuously see ourselves perpetrating the slave program in every facet of life. And so it goes to show you that this program was designed to deliberately cast future generations of Black people into a slave mentality. And I believe in Black Christian nationalism, if I'm not mistaken, the last chapter in the book is programming for liberation. And so we have to definitely have that programming for liberation in order to make sure that our children even have a fair future at being independent from the slave program that their ancestors was forced to live under.
This is a little different here. I remember when I was in Beaumont, Texas, and I was young, like, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. And what Nika was saying earlier, I had, we was on the sidewalk, and a white guy, a white man, I guess, white boy, you know, now I'm big time now, I call him white boy, right? The white man was walking toward us. That was my older brother. Then we had to get off the sidewalk. And I had some new shoes on, and it was some mud there. And I'll never forget that. It was that boy made me get off that sidewalk for that white boy to go by, and I messed up my damn shoes. I'll never forget that. But that what you're saying. That's where the game was played. And it haven't changed. Well, it probably done changed somewhat now, a different degree, but it's passed down, and you know, not just being in the shrine, but through the community. You can see different things that happen every day. And you wonder why, It's there. It's there. But it's for us to challenge it, though, and explain why BCN is the answer. Why BCN can liberate Black people. It's for us, though. We got the answer. We got to figure out how to put it out there more and more and more to stop this madness.
It's funny that Anika Tene, you brought that up about the Black people getting off of the street, because as Kimber was taking me to work this morning, she noticed we were on Ashby, Fundi Anika. We was at the Ashby Theater, and there was a white, we're in the middle of the hood. This is on Martin Luther King Drive and Ashby, the corner of Ashby. And we saw a brother coming up the street and a white man walking down the street. And the brother got off of the street, or he got off of the curb and went into the street to let the white man go by. And we just thought like, things haven't changed that much. One of the things that I wanted to mention was when we mentioned about the Black Barbie and the Black Ken, we have to remember to come up with our own images, and not, as Jerry Moji or Bebe said in Black Christian Nationalism, we're not trying to redo or put a black face on a white icon like a Barbie. I don't think of a Black woman as a Barbie, or I definitely the hell don't want to be no damn Ken, right? I'd rather be a Shaka Zulu or some Black figure, or the Black Messiah. Like, we're not painting Jesus black. Jesus was Black. That is a historic fact. So I would caution us that are conscious not to take their images and recreate them to Black to we don't have to do that. To me, we don't have to do that to appreciate our great Blackness. So
I agree with that, brother. The concern is that when we have our daughters and they're limited, because children learn through play, and if the only options that they have to play with, I mean, they have a lot more options now, but I remember as a little girl, there were very few options for us to engage in as little Black girls, to engage in as play and for make-believe. So it wasn't so much the idea of trying to replicate white culture in some way, but it is a recognition of the fact that we weren't even given any options at all, make-believe or not, to learn from. I mean, my Black Barbie went to college. I don't know what y'all Black Barbie did, but mine went to college. She had books and everything. But it's a problem, and I think it is reflected in the study that Nika Tene showed us, where children were choosing or associating goodness with whiteness and badness with being Black, and not having those positive images to play with.
So maybe one of the things we're telling ourselves is, as aunties and uncles and big brothers, that as the people in our circle, including those outside this church, have children, we want to make sure that we can provide them with images from infancy where they see themselves. And if you're the only person who brings the little chocolate chubby doll to the baby shower, you need to be that person.
Wanted to make a comment of also being in African Center education at the Shrine, how our machinery has to be so intentional, our efforts to deprogram, reprogram, and give our children a proper understanding of who we are, and appreciation for who we are has to be extremely powerful, because the stuff still seeps in. Sometimes we'll still notice bad messaging that they've picked up, and then we have to confront that messaging right then and there. But even with them being encapsulated in the kind of environment that we offer, it's the machinery is so powerful. And so we have to be extremely deliberate. And it has to be like ×4, at least for what they're doing to counteract that. And so that's the comment that I wanted to make.
I think that goes back to those statistics that you gave, Nika. It takes so much longer to get rid of a bad habit than it does to establish a good habit. And to me, that just makes me think about us, us, Black Christian nationalists. We love Black people. we are proud of our Blackness, but we have been conditioned. And if we're not careful, we can pass it down to others, to youngsters. Like Constantly was saying, if we show up at the baby shower not advocating for that little Black unborn child's future, then we're part of the problem.
That's right. Yep.
Any more comments?
And even when we look at our children's education, because a lot of this is so subtle, and I hope that you all can see this. This is a Carson DeLosa worksheet. This is a workbook that lots of teachers use. And so you have 2 Black children and you have 2 white children, and this is a first grade workbook. And so it's tracing the words. And so under the little white girl here, well, oh, I'm sorry. Well, under the little white girl, it says happy. Under the little white boy, it says proud. And then under the little Black boy, it says sad. And here we go with the angry Black woman trope. Under the little Black girl, angry. So a lot of it is subtle, and parents may never see this worksheet, but thankfully, this worksheet went home with this little first grader, and her mother said, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. And so, of course, they give the standard, oh, that wasn't the intention, and we will be more, aware of the images and the messaging, but we already know that it's intentional. And so even in light of us having to send our babies to public schools, and some of us choose to send our children to private schools, we have to make sure that there is also that supplemental education, just like the Japanese youth, their children go to Saturday school. So that's why our freedom schools are so important, so that we can help our children to navigate through this insanity. Otherwise, we look up and they're 17, 18 years old, and we don't know who they are. But that's on us, because there is an African proverb that says, if the yam does not grow well, it is not the yam that's to blame. It is because of the soil.
The soil.
So that's our responsibility.
So Mama Hanifa, what's so funny today is I got up this morning and it's like the t-shirt of the day. Freedom School.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
I think we also have to recognize that this is an institutionalized, systemic program being run on everybody. And we have to develop and maintain and sustain our own institutions.
Yes.
And understand that a system is a group of things that work together to do a job. And we need to understand that we need our system, which is our program, and our institutions to help us to implement, maintain, teach generation after generation. That's what institutionalizing what we are about in our culture, why we are and what we do. And that will become stronger and more powerful as we go through the processes and practice and live as who we are. As a teacher, I often have to look for supplemental resources. And very often, I'm a science teacher, and very often those materials that teach natural concepts do not have, are not available or readily available. So we have to begin to develop our own. We have to continue, not begin, we've always done our own, but we have to continue to develop our own cultural resources.
And those of you who are gifted, like Anika Tene, to tell stories, we can self-publish more stories. We can teach basic concepts. Printing is cheap now. Books can be there electronically. Those of us who are moving to retirement, that we're just moving to not retirement, but to a different form of work. And we can make use of those skills that we acquired for years and place them in brown bodies and give them to brown children.
Speaking on that.
Done that with Akiba Land. While our children did go out into the schools, when they came home, there was always a program there for them to counter any negative energy that they received in school, right? In lessons and interacting with people. They always came home to Akiba Land where they were immersed in, study and disciplines that, let them know that they were special, to let them understand that Black people are powerful people. And so, we've always had the answer. Now, how do we continue on our road with all of these restrictions that we have now? We're, doing this Skype. So that's just my comment right there.
Well, thank you, Sister Munira and Sister Nika Tene. In the 15 or so minutes we have left, are you ready to move toward application?
Well, actually, what you could kind of apply something that we learned to this. I want to share a folk tale with you, if you'll bear with me. And after I finish the folk tale, I just want you to tell me how this relates to programming. So please, here we go. Old John was a slave, and there was old Massa and old Missy and the two little children, a girl and a boy. Well, John was working in the field and he seen the children out on the lake in a boat, just a hollering. They had done lost their oars and was about to turn over. So he went and told old Massa and old Missy. Well, old Missy, she hollered and said, "It's so sad to lose these, because I ain't never gonna have no more children." Old Massa made her hush, and they went down to the water and followed the shore and round till they found them. John pulled off his shoes and hopped in, swum out, got in the boat and with the children and brought them to shore. Well, Massa and John take them to the house. So they were so glad because the children got saved. So Massa told them, make a good crop that year, fill up the barn, and then lay the crop next year. And if you do that, he gonna set them free. So John raised so much crop that year, he filled the barn and had put some in the house. So Friday come, and Massa said, well, the day done come that I said I set you free. I hate to do it, but I don't like to make myself out of line. I hate to get rid of a good nigga like you. So he went in the house and gave John one of his old suits. John put it on and he come in to shake hands and tell them all goodbye. The children, they cried, go. So John took his bundle, put it on a stick and swung it across his shoulder. Well, old John started to walk down the road. Well, old master said, John, the children love you. Yes, sir. John, I love you. Yes, sir. And Missy like you. Yes, sir. But remember, John, you's a nigger. Yes, sir. For as far as John could hear, him down the road, he was hollering, John, oh, John, the children loves you. And I love you. The Missy like you. John would holler back, yes, sir. But remember, you's a nigger, though. Old master kept calling him, and his voice was pitiful. But John kept straight on stepping to Canada. He answered old master every time he called him, but he consumed on with his bag. And that's the end of my story. Now, what did that have to do with programming?
That is a regular garbage bag, huh? Yeah. We know it works.
So Nick, I got out of that the Declaration of Black Inferiority was all in that screaming to John. But what I also get out of that is that John didn't turn back; he just kept going. So obviously he was determined. And I think that's something that we ought to take a lesson to. A lot of what you gave today, I thought was real good in terms of the examples. And I think that most of us on here could, and understand that, because we wouldn't be on this call if we probably wouldn't be part of the church or part of this movement, if you will. But I think we ought to also look at the obstacles or the challenges that we have. There are so many more obstacles. Some of those examples you gave were, they've been around for some years, and we're still under the same kind of conditioning today. You can see it in all, there's more media, more streaming, more TV. We just had to deal with TV back in the 50s, right? Now you've got kids on tablets 24/7 just about. And they're getting fed this inferiority complex all the time. So when you talked about the unseen, that's what really gets me. It's the psychological or the spiritual DNA that people have now that we do automatically because we've been taught it, we've been conditioned it. I can remember seeing my father and my uncles at times when they talked to certain people, or just people in the neighborhood, when they talk to white folks, they put their gaze down. They wouldn't look them dead in the eye. And that's a learned trait most people will pick up without even knowing it, But it's those kind of things, it's the things that we don't see that we continue to do. When you talked about light skin and dark skin, we picked that up in the dozens. And we still do it today. Light skinned people have a certain kind of, people feel they're a certain kind of way, a certain prototype, if you will. It's all psychological. But we, just like you talk about that Willie Lynch stuff, it's passed on, it's conditioning. And right. We take it on and carry it further. And so back to, it's a program that has to be undone. And so it takes programming to undo it and even more programming to undo it. And so we have to be reprogrammed. We have a big challenge in front of us as a church, as a movement, because a lot of people think we done, they seeing stuff on these videos and think, okay, there's a movement going on, but it really ain't changing nothing. It's not changing anything. We have to be intentional about our movement. And if you really believe in it, then you have to contribute and continue to work towards it. But I thought the presentation was really well done. Thank you.
But when you said something about psychological, that was key, because in this story, even though he had freed John physically, he was still trying to keep him a slave in his head. All while he walked away, he kept telling him, "You're still a nigga. So he freed it. And that's the thing, a lot of this, and that's why we say we're psychologically sick. These repetitions over and over and over and over again over time. And a lot of times, even with our parents, when we know better, we do better. But for a lot of us, our parents could only give us what they had.
Right.
Remember in The Color Purple? When she was clowning, and then Harpo asked her what to do. He asked Miss Silly, was that her name, what to do? And what did she tell him? Beat her. That's what she knew. She told him what she knew. And to deprogram ourselves from all of this, it's going to definitely take a process, because this is over 400 years of conditioning and having gone to schools and institutions. And, you know, and I'm glad we had the dialogue, because there was another part of this presentation, but I deliberately stopped at this point so we could talk about it. So guys, we really want you to hang in there and come back to see us next Wednesday, because I'm gonna finish this. So we have other things to talk about.
Amen. So Sister Nika Tene, Sister Io would like to contribute to the conversation in the last 5 minutes or so we have left. I see a hand raised.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to, I don't know how to let this hand down. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I was just trying to share. I took a little bit of a different, I think, take from that. I took the importance of counter programming, because it makes me think about Sojourner Truth. And she, you know, she used to say, like, I sell the shadow to sustain the substance. And to me, that's kind of one of those things where it's like, just let whoever think whatever, you know, and keep on doing what you know that you are here to do or determined to do. Like, he responded, yeah, you know, but he never stopped doing it.
That's right.
So that was, you know, what I took away from it, as opposed to the constant attack on him. I took away his constant dismissal. So.
And so again, I think what that shows is that he understood, yes, I may have been enslaved, conditioned, but I never accepted the identity of being a slave.
Well, I thank all of you for your comments. It was very enriching, and we need to have this dialogue. We absolutely need to have it, and we just hope that you guys pass the word and get other people to join us. But out of respect for time, we've done really good today. Thank you, guys. Pastor Kalonji, can you bring us home?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Woke Wednesdays. If you sleepy, you don't want to come on here, we're going to wake you up. Great presentation, Sister Nika. Great presentation. We want you guys to come back next Wednesday for part 2. Again, this is a collaboration between Team Mbile and Team NA. And so we're going to cover the whole month of March, bringing you that fire. Bring your kids on. Ask your nephews and nieces, your grandsons, your grandchildren, your children to come on and participate. I'm going to be trying to get more youth on, young adults on as well, because they need to be a part of this conversation. Most definitely. So if we have nothing else, let us end with a word of prayer, and we'll dismiss you this evening. Let us pray. The great cosmic conscience of this universe, we ask God that you would continue to bless the shrine of the Black Madonna Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church. We believe and hold dear that nothing is more sacred than the liberation of Black people. Continuously give us the tools and the skills to liberate the minds of Black people all across this world. We thank you, we love you, and we continuously march forward. In the name of Jesus, that Black revolutionary Messiah, we say amen and Ashe.
And Ashe.
And Ashe.
You all right down there, Coach?
Okay.
Good job, Nick.
Thank you. Y'all supposed to be leaving now.
Awesome job.
I don't want to.
Y'all just want to hang on and hear some more, huh?
job.
Yes, that was awesome.
Oh, we got something for you next week. Okay.
All right.
See you later.
What would be our homework so that we can we would have more to add to what you're going to present next week?
Oh, you want some homework? Let me see.
Decompress, y'all.
Yeah, because it's gonna be a little intense. We okay. Just think about it. We're gonna talk about it next week, and we're gonna move on to another level. But yeah, it's a lot to think about.
All right. Peace out, Black.